Have you ever felt like your music is missing something? A great melody will take your music to the next level. Today we're going to focus on the core elements of melody, so even if you've never written a melody before, by the end of this video, you'll be able to write some pretty decent melodies over your beats. Let's get into it. So what makes a good melody? There's one core element that is super important when it comes to melody, and I'll give you a hint. It's not the different notes that are in the melody. It's actually the rhythm. Let me prove that to you here. I'm going to play a common nursery rhyme song on a single note and see if you can tell me what it is. Many of you might have recognized that as Mary Had a Little Lamb, but how is it that I can play Mary Had a Little Lamb and you can recognize it without using any other notes? That just speaks to the power of rhythm when it comes to melody. And also, that was a very simple rhythm, and simplicity is also an important part of a great melody. All those songs on the radio that you're able to sing back and remember, they get stuck in your head later, it's because those melodies are really simple and easy to remember. So I'm going to focus on playing some simple rhythms on a single note across this 8-bar loop. Let's record. All right, simple enough. It's just a single note, so there's not much to write home about yet, but let's dig in and take a look and kind of dissect this a little bit. First off, you're going to see a combination of two different types of notes: short notes and long notes. Also, you're going to see a couple repeated phrases. So at the beginning of this melody, you see two short notes followed by a long note. In the second half of the melody, you're going to see that exact same phrase repeated again. Then, if we take even closer look, you'll see that in bar 4 here, we've got this sort of faster rate collection of shorter notes right at the end of the 4th bar, the first phrase. If I go over to the end here and we look at bar 8, another collection of short and fast notes right at the end of the bar. So we have simplicity, a single note, we have a combination of short and long notes, and we have some elements of repetition. But obviously this would be very boring to listen to if this was our song. So let's actually start building this out so it's a melody we actually want to listen to. Since this song is in the key of C major, I'm going to use only notes in the key of C major. Let's start working with our first phrase here, this first collection of notes. You're going to notice I'm going to use the word phrase because if you start thinking about melodies as like a story being told, or at least just a sentence has structure just like a melody has structure. And if you have a run-on sentence, it sounds like I'm blabbling, like I'm kind of doing right now. The sentence goes on and on and on. But if you have a nice, short, concise phrase, think of all those slogans that you hear or good speeches. They often have great writing and great sentence structure. Same deal with melodies. So let's bring some of these notes down. I think I actually want to start on the note C. And we're going to start building some contour in our melody, but one rule we're going to want to follow is to not have too many big leaps like this. We can use them occasionally, but we're going to want to focus on doing a lot of consecutive notes. C to D, these are 2 consecutive notes. Let's actually do 3 consecutive notes in a row and do C, D, E. When I say these notes are consecutive, in the key of C major, C, D, E are the first 3 notes. They're right next to each other. So listen to that back. Great, that's already sounding better and more catchy, but we have this little repeated G, which I didn't think sounded too great or too catchy. So again, we're going to try to build some contour. We were ascending here, meaning we're going up in our melody. So maybe on this last note of this phrase, da 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 da, we can come down instead. So let's bring that down. Maybe we can even bring it down back to the E. Da 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 da. Let's hear it. No, I don't like that. It feels too open. If I bring it back down to C, which is our root note, that's gonna really feel like we've arrived and we've like landed somewhere, because C is the root note of the chord. Let's play this first phrase. Nice. Now, it's actually not terrible, those notes, those G's repeating right there, but let's see if we can build something, again, a little more fluid. We can still start on G, but again, let's go back to our consecutive note rule. This leap right here, C to G, sounds pretty good, but we don't want to have like 2 leaps in a row. So if we're going to use a different note, let's go ahead and stick to our consecutive rule and bring this note down to an F, the next consecutive note. G, F. The next consecutive note from there is E. And then again, contour, dot, dot, dot. We're going down. Maybe we come back up to the F. And then maybe it is time, since this is the end of the phrase, to land back down on our C note. Let's listen to this back. And I actually don't like how we created that contour there. So here we just have a straight up descending line from G all the way down to C. I think that's going to sound a little bit better. Let's hear it. Da, 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 da. That sounds good because you're just like basically playing the scale in reverse, which is fine here. So that's the first 4 bars of this melody. And I'm going to zoom out here just so we can look at it as a whole phrase. What do we have? We have the combination of short and long notes. We have a clear structure where if you think of this as the first half of the sentence, da 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 da, it kind of ends and it's complete. But you have more to say. So we've got these kind of faster notes alluding to the fact that this melody is going to continue. We do keep resolving down onto this C at the end of both halves of this phrase here. C here and a C here, which gives us a very rooted and resolved feel. So I'm happy with this first half of the melody. Now let's move on to the next 4 bars and let's work on the notes for the second half of the melody. Like I said earlier, repetition is a good technique to employ when it comes to writing your melodies. So let's start with the same exact phrase. C, D, E. Again, that's the exact same phrasing as earlier. Da, da, da. Da, da, da. And it's okay to repeat yourself in melodies, but we don't want to repeat ourselves too much. So let's examine where we went last time. Da, 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 da. We went down low. So for this second half of the melody, to have some sense of evolution, let's not descend down low. Let's actually ascend. And to do that, let's use actually a couple little leaps here, because we're going to leap down from this E to this C, which is a very safe note. C is a very safe note in the key of C major, obviously. G is also a very safe note, which we have right here, our G, because it's the 5th, and the root note and the 5th of a scale sound very consonant together. But I think we can take this further, actually. Let's elevate this G. Let's do a huge leap here. Let's go all the way up, speaking again to the safe notes to go to. Let's go to that C way up there. Nice. And I do want to be cautious. I don't think that C to G sounded bad, but since we're up there, let's stick to our consecutive note rule. And let's start to build some walking down. So we can go C to B. And you know, before we did just walk down the scale, essentially. Let's land on G. Let's hear how this sounds so far. So we went C, B, A. Just the notes in order of the scale, descending. right, it sounds okay, but this A doesn't sound too satisfying. So let's land on a note that sounds a little more like home. We can do either C or G, and since G is the closest, I'm getting down to the G. This is going to sound a lot more resolved. All right, cool. And perhaps we can mimic a little bit about what we did in the first phrase where we resolved onto a C here. Let's work backwards. We want to get to our C for our last note. So let's descend to it. All right, so let's listen to this last phrase and see how that all comes together. Nice. I like that. But when you're just starting out, it can't hurt to just be in the grid and really examine what's happening with your melodies so you can improve them and you can understand technically what's happening behind them. And then eventually, playing these melodies or just hearing melodies in your head will come more natural because you understand some of these core rules. Cool. So we have this descending line here, which we just changed. We just shifted the notes down a little bit. I think that'll sound a little better. And don't forget, this is writing music. So a lot of this is going to come down to your personal taste. I might be making choices here that you don't think sound as good. That's what makes music beautiful. Let's hear what it sounds like. Great. Repeat that. Nice. I think that makes for a pretty good melody here. You can let me know what you think of it in the comments down below. But again, I just want to zoom out and look, now that we have this full 8-bar melody written, let's examine it. Notice the shape here in the first 4 bars. Think of this as our first sentence. It's got this really nice contour where you've got sort of this triangle shape, up and down, up and down, up and down. We used a combination of short and long notes, which we talked about at the beginning. And we constantly resolve back down on C, which gives us a nice, resolved, settled sound. For the second half of the phrase, we don't want to just retread the same thing, but we can use repetition. So the opening phrase here, da-da-da, is completely repeated in the second half. Da-da-da, we're telling the same story, but we're adding to it. Instead of coming down dramatically, we actually went up dramatically. And that's a really easy tip for when you're crafting variation in your melodies. If you did something before, do the opposite. If you dropped down low before, let's take a big leap the next time it comes around. But remember to use those big leaps sparingly. And then from that big leap, we ascend back down, combination of short and long notes. And we resolve back down to a C to end the phrase. It feels like we've completed the sentence. It doesn't have that run-on sentence feel. And to better visualize this even, instead of looking at this MIDI roll here, I'm going to X out of that. And I'm going to go into the keyboard view of BandLab. And I'm going to turn on the smart grid. And just pay attention to where the leaps and the consecutive notes are. Kind of stayed right in this area for this whole first phrase. That gives you a good visual of the combination of consecutive notes and actually the total range of how this melody went. We didn't go all the way down here, then all the way up here. All these notes make sense with each other. And when you stick to some of these loose rules that we talked about, you have a much more fluid, a lot easier to remember melody, which is ultimately what is going to make people think your melody is catchy. So this song is currently just this loop right now. It's just these 8 bars. But in my next video here on the BandLab channel, we're going to discuss song structure. How do we take an 8-bar loop like this and expand it out into a full song? If you have any other questions about how to write a melody, or if you found this video helpful, let us know in the comments down below. Ideas for future videos are always welcome. Thanks so much for watching. This has been Tejo for BandLab. Have a good one.